Hello and welcome to UX Leadership by Design. I'm Mark Baldino, your host. I'm also a co-founder of Fuzzy Math. Fuzzy Math is the user experience design consultancy that brings consumer-grade UX to business applications for B2B and enterprise tools. And today is a super special episode. I got the chance to speak with not one, but three members of the Pendo design team. Ryan, who is a product design intern, John, a senior product designer, and Holly's a senior product design manager, and all on the role that AI plays in their work and in the design process. We start with exploring how Pendo is AI forward from the top down and how they've created a culture around AI exploration and now have a very, very healthy AI integrated design process. We get into some of the specific tools they're using, some really impressive implementation wins, and advice for all of you, regardless of your experience level with AI. Okay, so this is a great conversation with three friendly, smart, talented folks. So please enjoy the episode. And if you do, please like and share. And as always, thank you for listening. Welcome to the podcast. I want to say this is the first for UX Leadership by Design that we have three people on the podcast, which is super exciting. I've done two, and the only time I've done more than one was with Fuzzy Math employees. It was two folks. So to have three people from Pendo's design team is super exciting for me. I really appreciate your time today. I'm super excited about the conversation we're going to have. As is per me, I don't know, every podcast, everyone I've done, I love for people to kind of cover a little bit about their background and maybe how they got into design, where they are in their design career, because I know we have some different ranges of design career. And then we're going to be talking about AI today and how designers are using AI in their product design process. So after your intro and background, if you can just give a little bit of a sense of kind of what your exposure has been to AI over the past several years, that would be great. And Ryan, wanted to start with you.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Ryan Markley. I'm a product design intern at Pendo. I'm a senior at NC State University studying graphic and experience design with a focus in data science. My exposure has definitely been primarily through my education with AI tools like ChatGPT, Figma, and FigJam AI, Adobe AI. But coming to Pendo, it has expanded to Bolt and other systems like that. So it's definitely still growing, but it's been intertwined with my design process and very much for like experimentation and integrating there.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Holly, how about yourself? You've been on an event with me, did a webinar a month ago, so I know you a little bit, but introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. Holly Reynolds. I am a senior product design manager at Pendo. I've been in the industry for a very long time. Also, former UX bootcamp instructor. How I got into the industry started out actually as a front end engineer and sort of transitioned over to design, which is a very long story that I won't share here just for time's sake. My exposure to AI has been probably similar to a lot of people of various levels in the industry. I've played with it. I've used it for personal use to understand how to address problems with my plants. And then I've used it for really complex strategic decisions, such as, how can we identify the proper metrics for this particular feature that we want to launch? What are the considerations that I'm not thinking about? As far as types of tools, typically, currently I'm using Claude, Cursor, Bolt, ChatGPT, leveraging Figma's Make a bit. I'm less on the design side these days, being just in full-time management, but definitely still like to play and see what's possible with it. So those are probably where I'm spending most of my time right now in terms of specific tools.
Awesome. Thanks, Holly.
Mhm.
All right, John, round us out with intros.
Yeah, what's up? I'm John Incampo. I'm a senior product designer at Pendo. I've been a professional designer for about 10 years and a product designer for a little over 4 years. I think I'm just like a lifelong designer, like lifelong artist. I've been drawing and designing my whole life. I loved like HTML and CSS and making websites when I was in high school and just kind of like naturally flowed into product design eventually. It did take me a little to get there. I started in graphic design and then I kind of transitioned to web design. It was like building WordPress websites and then eventually started doing SaaS applications. When it comes to AI, I'd say recently I've been pretty much like obsessed with it, but it's just been a slow burn. And first I had ChatGPT and then it was like Midjourney and now it's like Bolt and Cursor and constantly just like seeing what you could do with cursor, and it's just like super exciting, especially like coming from somewhere that I used to do WordPress websites and like try to make websites. I was always like limited by my development knowledge. It's like I only knew up to like JavaScript, and now it's like, okay, like I could really like explode in possibilities.
Yeah, fantastic. So for the listeners, if you didn't catch that, we have kind of three folks who are at different stages of their career. Ryan just beginning, John, a number of years as now a senior product designer, and then Holly is senior product design manager. So different phases, but all at Pendo, which is super exciting. And I'm kind of curious. So at Fuzzy Math, which digital consultancy, we work with a lot of clients, and what we're hearing is leadership has created a mandate for AI. What is the team doing with AI? How can we better integrate AI both in our process, and then most of the clients we work with are SaaS software providers. How can we integrate it into our product? So I'm kind of curious, what is that leadership, empowerment, or AI? I don't know if it's a mandate. I don't want to say that, but it feels like in a lot of our clients, there's sort of this mandate you got to be using sort of AI. What does that feel like at Pendo? What's been the communication, and kind of how's it getting integrated? And Holly, if you don't mind, I'd love for you to kind of start from your position and perspective.
Absolutely. It starts all the way at the top at Pendo. From the CEO all the way down, we are strongly encouraged to explore, to play, to take risk. Now, I want to be clear, we don't take risk with our customers, with our customer data, but we are encouraged to play in terms of how we design things and how we build things, and to try to understand what the opportunities are to be more efficient, to add more value, to explore. And I think that it's important that we have that that empowerment at the leadership level, because that helps us to get blockers out of the way in terms of being able to access certain tools. We're able to move quickly, and I think it also helps us to be able to really just go and learn and explore.
So, John, at your sort of level in the organization experience, how does that and is mandate the right term, or just encouragement? I mean, from executive leadership.
Yeah, I think mandate might be the right term, but I think it depends on your perspective. Like to me, that's exciting. Maybe some people are like, I don't want to use AI, and like this, it's a little more frustrating. But to me, I've loved the empowerment of like, hey, like we're gonna give you guys these tools, and like, we got Bolt really early on. We have like product AI sessions, or like once a week we just like talk about what people are doing AI, and we have a few Slack channels where we do that. But no, I think it's great, and it's just like super exciting to just see how people are like elevating their work. Like I feel like I've elevated my own work just by working with these tools, and I've seen other people do it. And the more it's ingrained in, the team, I think it's just better. I think every team should be using AI with their work at this point. Like you gotta stay with the trends, and like you gotta keep evolving as a designer. So this is just another technology that we should be using. But yeah, you'll see it. We've seen marketing come in and do talks on how they're using it. We've seen, I'm sure, all over the place they're using it. I mean, specifically, we obviously focus in product and design, but yeah, it's definitely a company-wide thing.
That's great. So a lot of knowledge sharing. Do you mind me just diving into? You said you guys have like a series of Slack channels, and then like a weekly meeting, and that's just the design team. And what happens, if you don't mind? Oh, not just
not just the design team. It's product and AI, but it's really kind of open to everybody. So it's the product team, design, engineers, and marketing sometimes. It's really just kind of ad hoc topics. We have a designer, Brian Greenbaum, shout out to him, who started this whole thing. But like, yeah, usually just different topics. Like I did one recently on how we integrate Bolt into a design sprint, and how we got our PMMs and our PMs and our engineering managers all prototyping and working. And it was just really a fun experience, but it's always something different.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I do want to get into in a minute the design process, how people are using these tools, do's, don'ts, guardrails, maybe good uses, and maybe some areas where it feels a little bit early. But Ryan, you're new to the industry. You're still in school. I assume you're with Pendo for the summer internship. What's that been exposure to AI in kind of a in a work environment within a design team as you're sort of new in your career?
Yeah, so I'm definitely newer to Pendo. I get to be here for 10 weeks, and it's now rounding out, but I've definitely gotten to see how it is encouraged. AI is encouraged to be used. There's a lot of freedom for me as an intern to use it for like experimentation, reflection. It helps me move faster. So it's been really cool to have the resources, like John was saying, of product and AI to get to hear from people who are, they've been in the industry longer. They've been exposed to this type of AI much longer. Like Bolt and Cursor, they're new to me, but I've definitely gotten to implement them into my projects and gotten familiar. So it's really exciting. I'm looking forward to taking that back to my education, but it's been amazing to have the resources and collaboration that Pendo provides when it comes to AI.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. So, are there like guardrails in the process of where you all want to be applying it, or where you can? Obviously, we'll assume that you're using it as Holly said. You're not taking any risks with customer data. We work with a lot of folks in regulated industries, so it's like we got to bring these tools inside of the firewall before we can, put any data into them. But let's put that to the side in terms of like trust. But are there areas that people are saying stay away? Is it open? Is it like really free form? How do you pick a tool? How do you pick a part of the process? Like, what does that look like? And I'm going to throw it open to anyone who wants to cover this one first.
I guess I can go first. I mean, I think it's kind of like a little bit of the Wild West right now in terms of like freedom. Like it's kind of like people are messing around with new tools all the time. I think we were given Bolt early on because Brian had experimented with it and he liked it. But we had tried Lovable, we had tried Bolt. Some people started using Cursor, so it's kind of been all over the place. It's kind of just been like new things come out, new updates every day. So you really just have to be like messing around, experimenting, and kind of sharing with each other. I think it's just encouraged to be fluid. There's no like strict use Bolt or use this. I do think the guardrails is just like don't forget all the process that we've had before. Like don't just throw everything into AI. Like it's like a partner in this. It's not like completely replacing these workflows that we've had for a while.
So do you, in your work, John, do you personally decide like, okay, I mean, you mentioned a design sprint. I'm going to implement it here. I'm going to kind of try it here, see how it fits into this part of the process. And I think it's a nice mental model of this is another, you're kind of a pair designer with AI in these cases. Are you just choosing where you want to place it and then see how see how the outcomes are?
I mean, that's kind of how it's felt for a little bit at this point, like just kind of seeing where it goes. I feel like I have a general workflow at this point, but when something new comes out, I do want to see like, could this fit in somewhere? But it's usually just like, none of my process is really different. It's just now I'm talking to AI the same way I would talk to other designers, the same way I talk to other people. It's kind of just like this other resource in the mix.
Holly, from like a design manager perspective, does that Wild West create any chaos, or is it like, are we in this exploratory phase and it's fine and we'll figure out when the dust settles, if we want to be more, I don't want to say rigid about where AI is implemented, but does that feel comfortable? Does it feel uncomfortable from like a manager's perspective?
Can the answer be yes to all of that?
That's right.
um,
Reading
I,
all of this is, yeah.
I think in some capacity, all of those things are true. It's a little bit of Wild West. It's also exciting. There's a lot of room for exploration. To John's point, new tools come out all the time, so we kind of all have to be constantly picking up and learning new things. I literally hear about a new tool every week, sometimes a couple of times a week, that someone on the team has picked up and is starting to play with or use, or their engineers are bringing in. And so now we have to understand. You mentioned guardrails, like, just because engineering has brought something in, how does that affect what design is able to do when this new tool is introduced? How does it change our workflow? And John also made a really good point, just going back to the guardrails thing about design process and making sure that as we're moving really quickly, we're not losing sight of the fundamentals that we know about quality user experience design and best practices. That is a bit of a challenge, I think, for design, but also for us as managers, because we're trying to remind the team, yes, we want to move quickly, and I know product is saying we have to move quickly, but let's make sure that we're taking a moment to review the data and know that we're making the right decisions as best as we can while still moving quickly. So that's probably one of the bigger challenges. And then in terms of just kind of tool management, I think there's always the question of cost. We've had people very quickly run out of tokens and start racking up additional expenses without even really knowing it because they were just, exploring. So I do think eventually we will try to align on some tools internally and put some more guardrails around it just from a cost management perspective. But I don't think we're really just there yet. I think we're trying to figure out what the new next thing is going to be that we'll officially kind of align on. And Figma's showing a lot of really good promise, to be honest, with its AI tools. So I want to be clear that, we're not necessarily looking to go away from that, but what can we use to supplement with AI?
Sure, we could also do a podcast on Figma's license model, which has always thrown me. It's always thrown me for a loop. All of a sudden, new people show up in our account. I'm like, wait, what's going on? But that's a side topic. If you know the design process, you can responsibly integrate AI or evaluate where it can fit into the process better, worse, or more effectively. But if you have other groups that, like, I don't know what it's like at Pendo, but in a lot of organizations, design teams, product design teams have been fighting for process for years, right? And what their coworkers and peers want is UI. And I don't begrudge them if there's anything that moves the conversation forward. I've said over and over again, like, the design team has the biggest sort of tool in the toolkit, which is to be able to develop UI. And when you show UI to somebody, whether it's an executive or a customer or a peer, it moves the needle in conversations. People have a visceral response when you put digital pen to paper and add color to it. So I feel like we've fought for the process to get to UI for a while. And we now have tools that allow a lot of groups to skip that process. So if you're in an organization and we now have more folks generating UI, right? These tools aren't limited to designers anymore, which is really interesting and I think very cool. Like, we did co-creation sessions for years with paper and pencil and asking people to design, and that's like really fun and really powerful. But using a digital tool to generate UI is like way more powerful. So if you're in an organization and you feel like people are skipping steps in the design process and they're getting to UI kind of quickly, and not as like a, hey, stop, but like, are there tips you think of, like, how are you communicating? This can be from anybody here. Like, how are you communicating to people? People like, oh, wait, we're at the wrong point in the double diamond to be doing this, or something like that. Like, are there tips that folks have to like slow people down from just like going into these tools, generating UI, and be like, let's make this the next dashboard?
We have had that happen. I'm happy to say that it doesn't happen often, but I think as people get kind of swept up with AI and all of the possibility, it has happened at times. Some of it is going to depend on what I call the UX maturity of the organization. I know Nielsen Norman Group did a UX maturity sort of quiz a couple of years ago that I thought was really helpful to kind of understand where the company is. I think the higher the maturity of sort of UX understanding and use at the company, the less that's a problem. And not everybody has the luxury of working at a company that, quite honestly, does really understand what design brings to the table. So, in that case, if you don't have support from senior leadership, because I think that's important, I'm happy to say we have that at Pendo. But if you don't have that, I think it's important to just have those conversations. But you'll have to frame it from the perspective of the person you're speaking with, because you're going to need to get their buy in order to be able to build that part of the process in. And there is, unfortunately, still at some companies a perception that design is going to slow things down. So how can you convince them that what you want to do doesn't have to take a lot of time, and that might mean adjusting your process, doesn't have to take a lot of time, but is something that's going to be valuable to do, and here's the reason why. That's what I would suggest, is having that conversation initially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that Holly said. I think it's one thing it makes me think of, like, when we say this, is like, I think as a seasoned UX designer, product designer, like, everyone's gone through the pain of showing a high fidelity design early, and somebody like latching onto it, and like, you didn't warn them that like this isn't exactly what it's going to look like. I mean, and you kind of learn that like early on, like, okay, like, if I'm not going to show wireframes or sketches right away, like, you have to give a warning that like this is just an idea. like, this is not what we're going to build necessarily. This is just like to get you excited. And I think people who haven't been designing for a long time and now have these tools, they need to just kind of learn, and like, as designers, we have to try to teach them that, like, you could do these things, but if you're going to show it to senior leadership or executive, please warn them. Please say, hey, this is just a design. This is just a concept, because I think you get again the problem of them thinking, okay, this is shippable, and that this is not a new problem for us, but it's a new problem for potentially PMs and other people.
Yeah, it's great. That's a great point. And a reminder, again, as you said early, we're following the same process. We were probably educating and communicating along the way in similar fashions. We just, maybe it's accelerated in certain areas. Ryan, I'd love to hear from you, because you're new in your career, still in school. I didn't go to school when there was AI, and you are. And so I'm sure it's not only changed the dynamic in education, but also being exposed to the design process, which now has people learning how to use AI tools. So it sounds like, hopefully it's a really interesting time. But is it confusing? You're trying to sort out like the AI usage. What is AI? I mean, educate me. Like, what is AI usage in your program itself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think my program does a really good job at navigating AI, but I think in general, since it's a time period where it's new for the design education system in general, um, navigating usage and making sure that it's used as a supporting tool, because as we've been talking about, like, it's in the industry, it's something that we're going to need to know how to use once graduating, but at the same time, not letting it replace critical thinking or that solid understanding of a grounded design foundation or process. I think that's really important, and it can be easy to get carried away, and things are exciting. We don't have as high of stakes as someone in an industry would. So I think it's almost sometimes extra important to make sure that it doesn't hinder our design process, but we use it for the things that it's good at, like, discovery, expanding, and thinking big, but not forgetting to hone in and genuinely crack down on the parts that are really important in the design process, because it's easy, and some professors are more experienced with AI because they're actively in the industry. Others haven't been in the industry for over 30 years. So navigating that is also something new. So I think students have to take initiative a lot. We have a great school system in place at NC State that luckily we have exposure to these new tools but it's important, to stay educated and to keep each other in check in group projects and everything, evaluating each other's design process. And we don't have PMs or engineers as closely that we work at in school. So it's really important to, intentionally think about its usage so that we can have it as a tool and not a hindrance.
Are you learning the design process agnostic of AI and then sort of folding it in, or is it happening all at once? Like, are you trying? I mean, can only imagine that the internship at Pendo has been like a fantastic work experience. You're seeing it live, but are you trying to figure it out on your own? Like, this is where AI should go, this is where it shouldn't, or this is what the design process looked like pre AI and post? Is that being laid out for you? Or is it kind of like, I have to figure this out?
I think it definitely depends on your exposure to different professors. Some are very interested in it and excited, and others, tend to stick to a very traditional method. So you have to have a curiosity to see where it fits in and take that time to learn on your own. But at the same time, we do have those exposures. We'll have, uh, talks with people who will come in and give their 2 cents about how it's being used. But at the same time, the design process, I don't think anymore will ever be agnostic from AI. So it's you have to be intentional about separating it and make sure that you have that core and then see how it adds in. But I think going forward, specifically in product design and UI, I'm not entirely sure how much it integrates into more visual professions, but I definitely think that it's only going to continue to be intertwined. So making sure that you, whether it's learning from experience, what works in what stage, but yeah, I feel like it's definitely been self-initiative while also getting that support from professors that are interested to help you distinguish where it should be used, where to really stay away and kind of hone in on just intentionally thinking without it. So yeah, it's been a mix, but very, very cool. And Pendo has been amazing at seeing how it works with other designers here. It's very insightful. So yeah.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, I think we'd all probably agree it's here to stay. In recent experiences, is it fair to ask maybe for some wins in terms of using AI personally, maybe on your team where you felt like, yes, at this part in our process, at this part in a project, we implemented this AI and it yielded A, B, or C. Does anyone feel like they have a win or two that they would want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I could think of, I feel like there's so many wins. Honestly, I feel like I have so many wins with like the AI being integrated into the process.
Right?
I think, I think, the first thing I would say is I think it's just like every part of the process, like it's just that tool. When I'm doing my competitive research, it's making things better. Like if I'm looking at interactions, it's just, I'm like, hey, well, how would you do this? And I could see just how it would do that. And I kind of put that in but just another screenshot basically in the bank of all the screenshots of all the regular competitive research I do. But like, I think the most powerful piece is just is unlocking some of the interactions and the prototyping aspect, because I mean everybody who knows has probably used Figma. I mean, if you want to create a really robust prototype, it's extremely time consuming. You have lines going everywhere, and if they break one of your paths, like the whole prototype is not going to work correctly. And now when you're doing user testing and stuff, it's just like, hey, do whatever. Like I've, generally do whatever, and I can actually see what you would have done. It's not like, oh, there's a hard stop that would have been, I didn't wire this up. It's just like, go on. So you're just getting way more insight into what the users are doing. It's much easier to design out those flows. And then the other part I would say is just interactions. Like I'm working on like this table component, and at one point, to get the animation style right, I'd be like, okay, here is in Figma, and like I'm kind of explaining it to my developer, and I'm trying to do it in Figma, but Figma can only do so much. And now I'm like, okay, I designed it in Figma, pushed it over to Cursor with my MCP, and I'm like, okay, do this, and I can see how it works. And I'm like, okay, now add some easing, and like I can have an animation that I'm like, okay, I can show my developer, and I have so much more control over those micro interactions that I ever had. So
That's awesome. I mean, both of those are, it's more than just high fidelity, right? It's actual like high fidelity interaction. In the first example, just for folks listening, what tool? I mean, you're still designing in Figma. What are you building these prototypes in?
Yeah, so we've used Bolt. I personally have been using Cursor a lot more. So Cursor is just it's like a VS Code clone that you could build things with, and it's a little more complicated. I think Bolt is easier, but Cursor is a little more technical, but the results are way better. Also, they have a great integration with the Figma MCP, where you literally could select frames in Figma and be like, hey, you see this? Build it. And it will, like, if you have components in Figma, it gets really close. It's really great.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Holly, how about from your perspective?
Yeah, an example of a recent one is Maddie Snyder, one of our amazing content writers, put together a GPT that is, she defined the rules for the GPT for best practices in language and microcopy within the product. So what we found is that we were constantly pulling her in to give us feedback on error messages and microcopy for a new feature or even large tech documents. This has, I believe, reduced the amount of back and forth that is required for her, and kind of gives us a bunch of little Maddies that we can go to in the form of AI without necessarily having to pull her in constantly and quite honestly stretch her too thin. So it's been really cool to see how that's been used, that GPT. That's just one example. I mean, obviously also being able to just really quickly analyze large sets of data and synthesize that data and be able to take next steps on it quickly is a big win. The downside of that is, to Ryan's point, we can't let it take over the critical thinking for us. We have to make sure that we are still reviewing the data that it gives us and the insights it gives us, and that it aligns with what we're thinking, and really make sure that we understand it, as opposed to just letting it kind of take those decisions and run with it for us.
That's awesome. Maddie Bot sounds like that's a really, really good use. I like that one. Holly, are you at your level in the org? Like, probably not. Are you doing any UI anymore?
Not really, not very often, once in a while, but not so much right
Is
now.
there anything like design management related that you use it that's like a tweak from how you would use it in the design process?
Yeah, one maybe simple example is I did some hiring recently, and I wanted to understand maybe what other organizations were looking for in candidates. So as I'm putting together my um, job details for that position, I let it write up the description. Now I'm particular; I don't like to use every word that it gives me, so I use it for inspiration, and then I go back and revisit and tweak it and make it what I want it to be. And things I don't agree with everything that it gives me either, but that's just one example of how I used it recently to simplify my job. Was just write up this job description for me, using this criteria, and it was great. It was very helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think there's things that are kind of tedious, and I'm not saying you don't like writing job recs, but that can be something that it's hard. They're hard to do, and they're hard to get into it. And I still feel like sometimes those tasks, like it gives you such a good head start, and it takes
Yeah.
that. Like I'm not a writer by trade, but that sort of fear of a blank page or getting started, like the fact that
Mhm.
it can give you such a head start, and the same can be said for UI as well, right? Like I was watching a designer that works at a client site and was looking for a series of micro interactions on a table, and it was like just clicking through it based on AI, and it wasn't none of the six options was going to be final, but I think it helped her in particular like get kind of started and then have a little bit of
Yeah.
extra sort of visual.
I, I will
Yeah.
add one more thing. Even though I'm not really doing design anymore, I am working currently with one of the other design managers on a project where we are combining object-oriented UX. Shout out to Sophia Prater, who is the creator of that. We're combining those principles using AI with a giant spreadsheet of all the components in our system. So we've put together this sort of hierarchy of the various large objects and then their child objects and the attributes for those objects and the actions related to those objects. And we're going to use that hopefully to create a better foundation for our design system so that when we go to build these AI prototypes, they're more up to date. There's less maintenance and management on our part. But we're using both the principles from OOUX and sort of this manual process to set that foundation. And then we're going to hope that AI can help us automate that and be able to move forward with a better system in the future that'll be easier to maintain.
That is awesome. I feel like that's closing a loop because I remember thinking through OOUX, and like design systems have become such a part of the process, and Figma obviously. And then AI came at a really interesting time where we have these huge libraries of well defined, whether inside of your firewall or outside, right, in the industry, and generating it, like being able to generate high quality, consistent, for the most part, UI. I'm now to think that you guys are going to kind of close that loop and up your game a little bit. That's really, really, really cool. Very curious
Yeah.
to see how that goes.
But just a little add on to the design system thing. I think everybody should be using AI with their design systems because personally, like I'm one of the biggest design system advocates, but like you write all this documentation and nobody reads it because nobody likes to read and nobody even does what you want. And now you could just plug into a chatbot and be like, they can just ask questions and you have like all that documentation you did isn't just sitting in a file somewhere dying. So
Yeah, 100%. I like it. I like it. Ryan, any sort of wins, positive uses of AI in kind of your design journey thus far?
Yeah, of course. I'm going to focus on this past 10 weeks because it's been really, really helpful on getting to go through an entire design process for pretty large subject matter in a short period of time. It's definitely sped up stages that can take longer. So it's been really helpful with, like, first off, learning a large system, even just asking questions about Pendo over time. It's been helpful to answer small questions, and then I can go, to peers and mentors and managers for others, but it's definitely been helpful for that aspect. Also, with research, clarifying research, like Holly was saying, synthesizing insights and everything like that. It's very, very good at summarizing and taking large quantities and making them concise and easy to read and digestible, which is very helpful. I've also found it helpful to use for pressure testing ideas. So just, smaller feedback, because I think it's crucial to go to other designers or, cross like other people for feedback. But for smaller wins, I think that it's very helpful to just like, identify any reasons immediately why it would work, wouldn't work, kind of help narrow down some potential directions. It's definitely very helpful for the speed aspect, but that's not to say that quality isn't prioritized, because it needs to be. So definitely having those checks when using them, but it can be very helpful, and I've found it especially helpful when, as John was talking about with the prototyping, it's been interesting to dive into that. I've gotten to really explore several ways that AI is used here in a short period of time, because of the quick cycles that it can be implemented. So yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I think some folks, design otherwise, are a little bit afraid to jump in, and it is, I think, as Holly, you said, like, you first start using it on maybe things that are not work related, healthcare or cooking or something like that, and then you start to see like, okay, I can now apply it, you know, applied in simple ways within my profession. And then having sort of a culture that's very supportive of it at Pendo, and then sort of seeing a series of wins, it all really builds on it, right? And then that becomes, internal momentum. So if you're a designer listening now and you haven't had a lot of exposure, either from an organizational challenge or maybe personal hesitation to actually get in and use the tools, I'm gonna start with you, John, because you said like everyone should be using AI. I like the approach, but like somebody who's a little bit hesitant, hasn't had any wins yet. What's some advice, and then we'll move down the line of folks of like for getting involved and finding ways to find some wins. Like, what's your advice to somebody who might be a little bit more hesitant, or is in an org that isn't as isn't embracing AI as much?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like anything. I think you have to just, to be interested, because I think as designers, or you need to keep learning, you need to be lifelong learners, and you really don't want to get left behind. These tools are here. Like, I like to say, like, I feel like we're in the moment where like print designers were like, oh no, the internet's coming. Like, what are we going to do? And like the ones who didn't do anything about it, like they probably don't have careers anymore. Well, it's been a while, but they probably lost their careers. The people who embraced it, they became the UX designers. I don't really know what the next role is, but like if you want to become the next role, potentially it's not a product designer anymore. Like, watch like so many YouTube videos. It's really just interesting stuff, and just enjoy it. I mean, it's just a fun new thing. I think just you have to be like, how could this elevate me, and just really just enjoy learning. I think that's just always part of the experience. I think don't be worried about like, oh, I'm going to do something bad, or like maybe not with your work stuff, but in your personal stuff, just play around. And like some of these tools they're really not that expensive. Like we have a cursor count at work, but I pay for my own cursor count. It's like $20 a month, and it's totally worth it. I think, you could always just sign up for a month for some of these. Some of them have free trials. Play around with different ones and just see what you like, because I really think you'll be surprised at what you could do with it. And I don't just gotta break the fear around using these tools.
Right on. I appreciate that. Ryan, I don't know if you're feeling overwhelmed by AI at this point in your career, maybe not, but do you have any advice for folks similar to you, either in school, new in the design career, of like exposure, jumping in from an AI perspective? Any advice there?
Yeah, of course. I think you have to do a lot of exploration on your own. There's so many resources. I mean, there's YouTube, there's podcasts, there's, threads that go on about all the different resources. But I definitely think it's important to jump in, because, AI's here. The industry's not pausing for you to catch up. So I think you have to take the initiative to explore and experiment. And like John was saying, a lot of resources are like free trials as well. So if you're curious, you don't have to like commit, but you can see what's going on. And, you don't know what you don't know. So if you don't jump into it, you could be, spending so much more time on something where you get a fantastic result. But, some things are more tedious than others. So really tapping into the opportunities that are that are there that are working for other people, and hearing what's going on from, leadership all around. It's very cool, and I think you have to stay curious, especially as a student. I think that's, the mindset we're supposed to have lifelong, but it's especially we have the freedom to do that now. So, exploring while you can, and really just diving into it. So
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Holly, anything to add on the advice for either folks in an organization that isn't as AI forward, or that have some maybe personal hesitations in jumping in?
Yeah, if you're in an organization that doesn't really have a solid AI forward focus, I strongly encourage every designer to still spend time investing in it for yourself. If you're one of those people who's not naturally curious, I feel like Ryan and John both spoke truthfully to the benefit of just being a curious person that likes to learn. But if you're not one of those people and you're being told you need to figure it out or need to use it or just feel that pressure, and you don't know anything about it, I would recommend just set up a ChatGPT account, start with the basics, go to it, and just say, I'm new to this. Where do I start? What do I need to know? And it'll give you a really just good starting point list. If you're even more nervous about asking it from that perspective, think of something that you're interested in. We've got designers who have used ChatGPT to fix their dishwasher. I've used it again, as I said, to detect problems with my plants and try to understand, how to improve their life quality. So start with something that you're interested in, that you have a problem on, and just ask it questions. And that can be a great way to just kind of understand what's possible and potentially develop that kind of curiosity as to what you could even go further with. That would be my advice in that perspective.
That's great. Yeah, I think people who are newer to it will be shocked at the results. It's gonna mess up. I mean, it might give you some wrong answers if you're looking for a history lesson. But on a lot of tasks, and specifically the UI stuff, which is really new to me, in seeing these tools, like the quality's there. It's as much about the starting point, that you give it as input, and then the editing process that comes out, right? It's not replacing all of our critical thought. You're going to need to, it's iterative, which is what a really, really cool part is, that you can generate multiple alternatives pretty quickly, and the quality's pretty high. So I think this is a good place to wrap. Hey, hopefully this episode becomes a resource for folks who are in the design and product space and are looking to integrate AI into their workflow. You guys not only mentioned a number of like tools by name and how you're using, but places within the process. And then, we kind of capped the conversation off with some advice for folks. So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak to all of you at Pendo, to hear what Pendo's doing. It's an exciting time for Pendo, and it's an exciting time for AI, and that all kind of overlaps here. So just want to say thank you for your time and energy today. Have really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much. It's
Yeah,
been
thank
great.
you.
you.
You bet.